A few weeks ago, we drove two 20-year-old Jeeps 1,000 miles to the Rubicon Trail. We ran the trail over the course of 4 days and then drove them back home another 1,000 miles. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a true Rubicon Trail trip if there wasn't some carnage. Halfway through the Rubicon, the Green Cherokee snapped a main leaf. These are good springs, but we were just asking too much from them, and they couldn't take the abuse of the Rubicon. We were able to finish the Rubicon and get home thanks to some duct tape and lots of ratchet straps, and now we're going to take this opportunity to make some much needed and long overdue changes to the rear suspension of the Green Cherokee.
So first things first, we bought new leaf springs for this thing. Right now it has 3.5-inch lift Rubicon Express leaf springs and a 1.5-inch block under there. We also have some boomerang shackles down there that I made about a week before we hit the Rubicon Trail. They worked fantastic and I'm hoping we can reuse them and they're not gonna be too tall. If they are, we'll just have to make some new ones. They get a joint in there instead of a bushing, so it allows for more flex and a better ride overall. Now to replace the 3.5-inch Rubicon Express leaf springs, I bought some 5-inch lift Iron Rock Off-Road leaf springs. I decided not to go with Deaver or Alcon spring just because I think once we 1-ton swap this, I'm afraid I might need a different height leaf spring. I'm not really sure. So I just kind of went for the cheaper option. They were only $400 for the set. So it's really not that bad. So I'm hoping with the extra arch on these Iron Rock Off-Road leaf springs, you know, they're 5-inch lift rather than the 3.5 that are in there. We can get rid of the silly little lift block. So we're gonna be using the new leaf springs. We're gonna be using hopefully the boomerang shackles that I made. And what I'm really excited for is we got a shackle relocation kit from RuffStuff. I did a lot of research on the shackle relocation kit, and a lot of different companies make them. I mean, I could have literally made them on the CNC, but I decided to go with the RuffStuff just so, you know, time, and it seemed like a really high quality product, so we're gonna test it out and see how it does. Now the shackle relocation kit, basically what that's gonna do is allow me to adjust my shackle angle back there. I was doing some research and I found that generally on a rig like this, you want that shackle angle to be roughly 40 degrees. Right now, I think it's pretty low. I think it's around 17. I think it's definitely lower than 20 last time I checked. So we want that better shackle angle, 40 degrees, so it allows for a better ride on the road and better flex on the trail.
Now the first thing we have to do here is get the weight of the body off of the springs, get these rear tires off, and get the shackles out of the way so we can cut the shackle hangers off of the unibody. These are what are getting replaced by our shackle relocation kit. Overall, it wasn't all that bad because this metal is so thin to begin with, and it's only held on by a few spot welds. I cut the outside of the bracket off for access, then found the spot welds that hold it to the unibody, ground those down, and then the rest of the bracket came off pretty easily.
The passenger side is all done. I got the bracket completely cut out of there. It's looking good so far. We're just gonna have to go ahead and clean it up later before we go ahead and paint it. But this is pretty time consuming just because the bracket wraps around the bottom, it wraps around the top here and the back side. So if you want to do a good job and make it look good overall, just gonna make sure to get all those parts and pieces out, and it's just a while with the grinder. But yeah, this side's looking good, so I'm gonna get to work on the other side. It is literally so warm today. I think it was about 90, 95 out today, and it just finished raining for like the past 45 minutes, which is kind of weird for Western Colorado. It's super humid. I've only been out here for a little bit, and I'm literally sweating so much.
Now the driver's side is a little different. The fuel filler neck assembly needs to be removed because it's completely in the way. It's only held on by a few bolts up top and 2 hose clamps at the tank. They're pretty easy to access as well. Originally I positioned my hose clamps facing down so it's easy to get a screwdriver on them, but it's possible if you've never had this apart that they could be facing up, and that'll make it a little more challenging to get this off.
So the driver's side is all cut out now. It's looking really good. So now I can go ahead and fit the new brackets up there. But before we do that, I think I'm gonna get this old leaf spring, well, both leaf springs on both sides out of the way.
If you have access to a torch set, it would make this next part way quicker. I tried to get the U-bolt nuts off with an impact, but per usual with old U-bolts, they're gonna have to get cut off.
So both brackets are removed, both leaf springs are removed. I went ahead and removed all these lower bumper bolts I have. I have a few more than stock. And then I got this weird exhaust bracket that I kind of just moved out of the way. I took out one of the bolts, loosened this one. So that's out of the way. Let's see how this fits in there. This is the bracket. Yeah. Let's put in a few bolts just to hold it. And we're gonna have to drill, I think, at least 2 holes, actually 3, now that I look at it. But in the end, it should sit something like that. That's pretty nice. Nice. So I really like this bracket. This thing's nice. We got 4 mounting locations in the back. Those go to stock bumper mounting locations. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we don't have to mess with those. There's 2 that go upwards on the inside here. They go through the floor, so I'm gonna have to drill holes into the floor. And then there's a plate that goes on the inside of the Jeep over there. I'll show that to you all later. And then we got on the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. This back one doesn't line up just because of the way I have my bumper configured. It's all custom. The hole on the bracket is towards the end over here, and the actual hole for in my unibody where the nut is over here. So I'm just gonna cut off the excess, drill a new hole in the bracket. We'll be good on that. And then these 3 line up no problem. As for welding, I really don't think that we need to. This bumper is very stout. It's got many, many more mounting locations than the stock bracket did. But just to be safe, we're gonna go ahead and weld this hole. I also just put these leaf springs next to each other for the first time. And obviously we got the new one on the left and the old one. This came out of the driver's side. Actually, no, the passenger side, because that's the one that broke. And they're right next to each other. And honestly, it's not that much of a difference, so that kind of worries me. Like I said, this is supposed to be 5 inches of lift. This one was for 3.5 inches of lift. And we had the block with this one. So the whole thing about this is we're trying to get rid of the block in this, so we went with the taller leaf spring. That's not much. It was only an 1.5 inch block, so we'll have to see. I have a 1-inch spacer on the coil in the front. So if anything, we'll remove that 1-inch spacer if the rear end sits a little lower, and that should level out the Jeep. And you know, honestly, that's better. You want to be a little lower because the lower center of gravity is better for the kind of trails that we're going to be going on. So I got all the holes figured out on this thing. I drilled the 2 going through the floor. And now we're gonna go ahead and just like loosely install all the bolts. I'm not gonna worry about grinding this down. I'm kind of having second thoughts about welding that. I kind of just wanna put everything together and see how it's gonna be without it welded, see if it's gonna be strong enough. So we're gonna go ahead and loosely install this right now. So I almost forgot there's 2 stiffener plates that go with this kit. These go along with the bolts that go through the floor, and I'm gonna show you guys how I'm gonna be installing these. That's weird. So this is the required hardware that comes with the plates in the kit. It don't fit through the holes. That's weird. I'm gonna have to drill these out. All right. So that should be drilled right now. So I'm gonna position you see we got a longer side right here, the shorter side. The shorter side I'm gonna position towards the back of the Jeep right here. And put those through.
Strong. Work for me.
I like it.
Hope it drives again. That's all I needed to do.
So like I said, this is all just loose assembly. The bracket is on there tight now though. I didn't use the nylon lock nuts that came with the kit. I'm gonna use these for final assembly. I just got some regular nuts on there right now that are gonna come off once the bracket comes off for paint. I think once we go together for the final assembly with this as well, I'm gonna use some red Loctite on these ones just because we don't want that bracket coming loose whatsoever. That can't be an option. We also got the leaf springs back in. I'm gonna install the U-bolts just loosely, and we're gonna get the shackle in on this side, then we're gonna jump to the other side. Got some new U-bolts for this, using the same top plate that came with my 8/8 swap originally. Alright, get that on there. Nice. Let's get that shackle in. We're gonna start with the furthest pull inward. There's a lot of movement in that. That's interesting. A lot of side to side movement in that is what I mean.
Getting the driver's side done was pretty straightforward after just completing the passenger side. It went really smooth, and then I was ready to set the Jeep down on its own weight.
The Jeep is sitting on its own weight right now. The leaf springs are in there loosely, the U-bolts are in there loosely, the shackles are in there loosely, and the only thing that's like really tightened down right now are the brackets on the sides of the frame. The Jeep is sitting perfectly level. It's looking really good so far. And I wanted to show you all the 40 degrees we're looking for right here. I got this little digital level. I got this on Amazon. It reads degrees. And between the upper and the lower shackle bolt, we're gonna be looking for 40 degrees. So we're gonna place a straight edge on there. I got a little ruler right here, and I got this thing, the little level, zeroed out, going up and down. We're going to stick this right on the straight edge, and we're looking at roughly, I don't know if y'all can see that, but that's 47 degrees. So that's slightly over what we want. We wanted at 40 degrees, we got 47. But lucky for us, there's adjustment in this bracket. We can go back at least 3 different notches, and each notch looks to be about 1 inch. And from what it's looking like, I think we're going to end up going at least 1 more hole back, so on the second hole, or even another after that, which would be the 3rd hole. So the Jeep is sitting pretty good right now. I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, we're gonna make some adjustments to that bracket. If anything, it's sitting a little too level than I wanted because there is some gear in the back of the Jeep, but not a lot. So I'm afraid that once we fill that thing up, it's gonna start sagging in the back a little bit. But we do have some adjustments that we are going to be making to that bracket. We're going to be moving that shackle, the upper shackle mounting location, back at least 1 or 2 holes. So that should help with the height slightly. So I'm going to get those brackets removed off of the frame. I'm going to get the frame cleaned up. I'm going to get the brackets cleaned up. We're going to prime and paint them. And I'm going to get to bed.
We're not using anything special to paint the unibody and brackets with, just some spray cans of primer and gloss black paint I got at the parts store. And this should do just the trick. With the brackets and unibody painted, it was time for final assembly. I installed the brackets with the nylon lock nuts and red Loctite to be sure they're not going to go anywhere. Everything lined up good and went together with no problems.
So I got the Jeep down onto its own weight. I made a few small adjustments and torqued everything. It's looking really good so far. I have a little wax marker that I'm gonna mark all the bolts with, just so I know that over time nothing's coming loose. But before we do that, we're gonna take this thing down onto the trail, just flex it out a little bit, see how it does. We're gonna let everything settle in and just adjust itself. Then we're gonna come back, check everything, torque it. Then we'll put the wax marker on the bolts. It's pretty cool. So with these 5-inch leaves versus the 3.5 and the 1.5-inch block, this thing is sitting perfectly level. So I think we did a good job picking out the right leaves. And if this thing does start sagging in the back with all the gear we put in it, like I said, we had that spacer on the top of the coil up here. It's about 1 inch, so we can take that out and it'll probably level her right out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing pulled out. We're gonna get it a wash too, I think. It's got all that Rubicon dirt on it still. Then we're gonna hit the trail.
I recruited Bella and Jake and we made our way to a local trail here in western Colorado. I find myself coming back here every 6 months or so because it's a great trail to test new modifications out on, especially suspension. There's plenty of rocks to flex the Jeep out on and tons of trails to explore here, ranging from easy dirt trails to buggy rock gardens only. The scenery here is also unmatched with views of the Colorado Butte Cliffs and the Grand Mesa. On the way to the trail, I immediately noticed a difference in the driving characteristics of the Jeep. It handles bumps better, it wasn't all over the road anymore, and overall it just felt more stable and safer. With the extra gear in the Jeep, the shackle angle sits right at 40 degrees, which is exactly what we were shooting for. I did notice, however, that the 2 lower springs in each pack aren't held in by a bracket like the upper 4 springs, so with all the flexing we were doing, it caused those lower 2 leaves to kick out. This could potentially be an issue just because of how far in our wheels and tires sit. They sit extremely close to the leaves to begin with, so rubbing on the tires with those leaves could definitely happen. I'll probably be making some extra brackets for those lower leaves here in the near future, and possibly get some wider wheel adapters for the JK wheels just to kick the tires out a little further from those leaves. It was a fun couple hours on the trail, and the Jeep finally seems ready for another long overland trip, which is exactly what Jake and I have planned for next week.
There's still a few more things I want to do to the rear end specifically of that Jeep. I want to do some new rear shocks just so it rides a little better. I want to do a sway bar. I've been talking about that for years now. Next video, we're going to be overlanding. Jake and I are going to be taking the 2 Jeeps and one of the dogs, I'm not sure which one, and we're going to be overlanding Colorado. We're going to be doing some trails that I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, so I'm pretty excited about that. So be sure to check out next week's video. As always, we appreciate y'all for watching. Be sure to like and comment. We're going to be responding to every single comment that we get. We love seeing them. Also, be sure to subscribe. We're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2023. Right now, we're right on track. We need like 6 a day, and so far, we're doing really good. As always, we appreciate y'all for watching. We'll see you out on the trail, and we'll see you next time.